But today we're here to talk about the future of the bookshop. So if I can introduce Mr. James Daunt.
I'm astonished that so many people are here, and I'm assuming if you are here that you're both familiar with bookshops and interested in them. But it might be worth just sort of quickly looking back 3 years. This is about the future of the bookshop, but we need to understand, I think, a little bit what might have happened 3 years ago. Waterstones 3 years ago was a business destined to lose a significant amount of money. Part of a chain with HMV that was ailing and in trouble, and it was to be closed. There was probably £40 million worth of value in it because it had a lot of stock that could have been sold off for pennies, but those pennies were going to add up to 20-30 million. Lots of very good shops that other retailers would want, and there was another 20-30 probably in that. And that money was of greater use to HMV, or rather HMV's bankers, than a loss-making chain. So Waterstones was going to be dead. As an independent bookshop owner, looking at that as a future book-selling world without Waterstones was not altogether alluring. Waterstones sells roughly 50% of the kind of books that I depended on at Daunt Books, that many of the independents absolutely rely on, and we lived off the crumbs of the table that produced all the distribution and the boring things that keep bookshops going. So we really did face a world that would have been highly problematic for all of those that survived at that moment. By utter serendipity, a nice Russian came along, Alexander Mamut, and offered a small amount greater than the banks thought that they could get from closing and winding down the business. And even more serendipitously, he was prepared to invest further to put Waterstones back together again. So 3 years on, our shops, I hope, are attractive ones, and we are beginning to answer the question of tonight: what is the future of bookshops? And I think the future of bookshops isn't actually any different for Waterstones than it is for Daunt Books, or indeed the myriad of other independents and the smaller chains, be it Foyles, Blackpools and the like. We need to manage to do 4 fundamental things. We need to produce nice environments, physical spaces that people enjoy being in, and I think we're beginning to do that. It does involve a certain amount of money and a certain amount of investment, where there has been an accumulated deficit of that investment, but generally it isn't much more complicated than getting pots and paint out and getting a lot of energy into these places, and spirit, and getting the furniture right, getting the displays right. But physical environment is really important for us. So we need good service, which is all about our talent and our people. It's about good booksellers who care what they're doing and who are supported in doing that job. In the independents, that is about having energy and spirit. In the chains, it's about the head office supporting local booksellers to engage with their communities and give them the bookshops that they want, and to give them enough of a living that they can actually do that with both authority and with pride. A certain amount of training, a certain amount of support. We need to have the right books and the right things that aren't books alongside those books in our shops. That has always been the inherent skill of bookselling. Choosing what you have in your shops. As an independent, that is a matter of personal choice, and most independents, and certainly for 20-something years that I worked on Marylebone High Street, I've really felt I knew my customers and that I could always keep the right books in front of them and be responding all the time to their needs. As a chain, that is about empowering our local booksellers to make those choices and ensure that the books that are piled up on these tables and on these walls are not the same as the ones that are in Blackpool and Bury and other places. We have gone from a world 3 years ago where every single Waterstones carried the same books. The books were there because a publisher paid for them to be there in the main. It is the way that Smiths work. If you walk into the Smiths and look at their bestseller list down there, it is dictated to them and given to them. It's a planogram. Every single one of those slots has been paid for. If we return to doing that in these shops, we will lose you as our customers. These books have to be dictated by what the booksellers in here want and what you, the customers, communicate and demand of them. Relatively simple, isn't it? We need to do all of that very efficiently. One of the aspects that devils our industry, be it on the publishing side, but certainly on the bookselling side, is that we're not great businessmen. We are profligate in our ways. We are subject to a number of vices. The sex, drugs and rock and roll of booksellers all have, as do all of those vices, have a negative side if you go too far. A little bit of drugs really does is quite nice, whether it's alcohol or others. It spizzes you up and it's good. Too much of it and you addle your brain and you're probably going to have a shortened lifespan. In the case of booksellers, that's about filling up your shop with too many books. It's about piles and piles of things that you had some great passion for, but actually the customers aren't interested in. It's about only selling to the customers who have your own taste. We are prone as booksellers to become overly intellectual. We read and we read and we read, and we become ever more elevated about in our passions, and we inflict those on our customers irrespective of who they are. So it's about achieving efficiencies as well. We are a business, we have to make money. If we're going to run bookshops in prime locations, we have to do it efficiently. We have to have good supply chains, we have to have boring things like computer systems that work, we have to have control of our working capital, immense amount of things which frankly have not been part of the language either of the independent sector particularly, and certainly not of the chains. There has been a dreadful cull that has gone around the entire ecosystem of bookshops worldwide. I went to a meeting just over a year ago in Europe, in which there were the booksellers of Europe were there, the chief executives. We had over £4 billion worth equivalent of book sales in the room, and every single one of us was loss-making. That is true and somewhat astonishing. Just a roll call around Europe. The largest bookshop in France is Fnac, the second is Chapitre. Fnac is for sale and is in big, big trouble. Chapitre is in the equivalent of administration. Toddle around down the peninsula. La Centrale in Spain is shrunk to now a dozen shops from its heyday. In Portugal, Bertrand is loss-making. Over in Italy, they're all in big trouble. They're integrated, thank God, there, but the book-selling arms are all loss-making, and even the greatest of them, Feltrinelli, is an equivalent of administration where they have that way you can make an arrangement where the state pays your wages of your employees, which keeps you going and you can sort yourself out. In Germany, Talier, we lost tens of millions of pounds. Selexis, the wonderful Dutch chain that had accumulated all of the best of the Dutch booksellers, has gone, is no more. I could go on. Everybody's losing money, and everybody is facing the same fundamental problem, which is that we didn't, at the end of the day, nobody running bookshop chains, including at Waterstones, did the fundamentals right. We have no online capability. We have no online capability because we didn't invest in our businesses and we didn't think about the future of our businesses. If you didn't do those things, as any retailer, you're in big trouble. And as all of us know from the retail landscape in the UK, if you got those fundamental things wrong, you close. And the whole raft, as the recession happened a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, a whole raft of recessions happened to all of those retailers from Woolies and onwards who hadn't got that fundamentally right. Waterstones and indeed other bookshop chains hadn't. It was a function both of leadership and of investment. The little further complication for booksellers was that their major competitor is Amazon, who is phenomenally good, is causing problem in all sorts of other sectors as well, but is focused on books and has brought the full fury of their efficiency. What do we do now? What is the future for us? So sort of going back to the beginning, it is about getting these fundamentals right, decent bookshops, staffed by passionate, interested, good booksellers who will give you service, creating environments that you like. We have to sell other things, and we have to do that in a way which doesn't alienate our core book customer base. A thing that is much easier said than done, and almost all of our bookselling peers are tripping up and failing in that, and it's a danger that we are acutely aware of. If any of you have been to the States recently and have been into a Barnes & Noble, it is a hell of scented candles and melting Godiva chocolate. It is awful. If we start doing that, we will lose you as customers. We need the decline in physical book sales to stop. We need enough people to continue to want to buy physical books. That, I'm glad to say, is clearly happening, both in the States and here. The rise of digital is slowing markedly, and one of the big questions that I was continuously asking both of myself and publicly was, would the rise of digital slow in time to keep bookshops in business? And that seems to be answered in the affirmative. Much slower growth, people continuing to buy physical books, and the reality is that most people are doing both. There are very few who have just gone digital, there are a relatively small number who are just physical, but there is an equilibrium there. It gives us, I think, a confidence that if we get these things right, we at Waterstones have a future, and I certainly know that with my other hat on, which is an independent bookseller, we certainly have a long and secure future. It's much easier for independent booksellers. We are more responsive, we're more motivated, frankly, we work harder, and this is of no disrespect for my bookselling colleagues who are in this room. They work extraordinarily hard, but within the context of a chain of 300, there isn't the same imperative that you have as an independent. Independents are good independents, have kept their customers and they've kept open, and in fact, both in my own shops and in those of my friends in independent bookselling, our sales have just carried on going up. You would look at the door books numbers and not know there was a problem. You would just simply not know that digital reading had ever come. Sales just go up 5-10% a year. Always have, always. Well, I mean, it always will, but there doesn't seem to be a fundamental problem there. They're locked into their communities, they're locked into their customer bases, they're absolutely engaged, particularly, I think, from all ages through. So I know I did it there for 21 years, I knew my customers, and what's more, my 20-something-year-old customers, I knew most of them from when they were children. So you really are locked into your community. That makes it much easier than it is in a chain, where the vagaries of different leaderships, of swings and roundabouts of chain life mean that we can have a fabulous team 1 minute and we then move them off to another. I hope that is slowing down and the way we've got more intelligence now applied to it. If we do, I'm utterly confident that we will have a long and secure future. Will bookshops continue to look like this? Yeah, the smaller ones will. You'll be, as you can see in here, there's quite a lot that aren't books that are being sold. We need to do that better. But fundamentally, you will never mistake our bookshops for being bookshops. Where we get a little bigger than this, the problems begin to multiply, and where we're in prime locations where the rents and so on are higher, we have problems. There we do have to bring in the coffee shops, we have to bring in, frankly, the social atmosphere which keeps us going. Recipes, which is a few doors down from here, could perfectly well sit at the top of a big bookshop and would add to that and would deliver, I think, more energy and vibrancy to it. It's
something that we haven't tried to do yet, but I would suspect that in 5 or 6 years' time, if you went into a large sort of Waterstones in Leeds, which is the only bookshop in Leeds, you're going to find, and it's 12,000 square foot, so it's 5 times, 6 times, 7 times as big as this shop. You're going to find lots of things that aren't bookshops, but I think the spirit of it and the reason you come into it is a bookshop. And after all, the people who buy books, all of us and all of those up and down this land, are the best, you're the best retail customers that there are on the high street. You will spend money on things you have no need to do so. You could go to our nice colleagues in their lovely library and they will lend you as much wonderful reading as you wish, and it will not cost you a bean. You can get your Kindle apps and you can read for free wonderful books, but we don't, because we're addicted to discovering new, to treasuring our bookshelves, to the pleasures, the simple pleasures that come from buying really good books, nicely recommended in a nice environment. And I think if we can deliver that to you and to do it in all communities up and down this land, we have a very secure future. Something that's been new to me at Waterstones is selling books in places that I had never even conceived that I might go to. I am a Londoner. I sell books on Marylebone High Street. It's a lovely, prosperous and nice middle class. If you hadn't gathered from the way I'm speaking and the way I look, that's who I am. It is really exciting being in Middlesbrough, where we have a bookshop, which is an absolute dump, with all respect to Middlesbrough, and I don't think many there would think otherwise. It's deprived, it's difficult, the employment prospects are terrible, it is utterly deprived. We have a really vibrant, good bookshop there, a bookshop that frankly gives me much more pride than this one. I think this is a super bookshop and is done. It's quite easy here. If you're in Bolton, Bury, Blackpool, all those Bs that go up the northwest where we've got a bookshop in each of those, we are a really important part of that community. And actually, keeping bookshops in those places is part of, it's the reason that actually Alexander Mamluk bought Waterstones. Rather oddly, a Russian resident in Moscow thought that that was really important, and he thought that if he was going to contribute back into the UK economy, that keeping bookshops in Blackpool and Bury and Preston and all the rest was fundamentally more worthwhile than buying a football club and importing a whole load of very expensive players. And I think it is to be hugely applauded for that. And for we in Waterstones, I think, know that we also have a responsibility to the wider literary community of which we are a part, to keep the shops there, to keep books being sold, to keep these oases of culture in places that wouldn't otherwise have them. Will those shops in forevermore make money and justify themselves? Well, again, I think if we get the fundamentals of it right, there is every chance that they would. It is astonishing how much of the Waterstones business comes from places like that. But we need to do it vastly more intelligently than it was being done in the past. I make no apology for the fact that if you go into our shops in Middlesbrough, in Sunderland, in all of these places, you will buy the same books that you buy here very much less expensively, because that is necessary to sell and continue to sell books in those places. We are a business which is scraping by. I'm now beginning to ramble in long circles, but Waterstones lost £37 million in 2011. That's really quite a lot of money. Even for a rich Russian, that's a lot of money. We can't continue to lose that money. We made a tiny amount of money in the year that's just ended, and we sincerely hope to make just a little bit more than that this next year. We need to do that so we can invest in the place and we can achieve all of these positive parts of bookselling. Will we do it? Yes, actually. We've hit our targets for the last 3 years. As I say, as I look over the fence, both at my colleagues in the independent sector and my own business, and talk around, nobody's getting rich, but nobody came into this business to get rich. We came into this business to fulfill a duty to, to get satisfaction from the joys of selling books and being part of the world. It's why people work in libraries, it's why people work in publishers, it's why people are in the world of books. We are in our little niche, and I think it's a niche which I hope in the future will be more respected within our world for what we deliver to it. Booksellers have traditionally occupied quite a lowly status. Most booksellers wanted to be publishers. Most booksellers, or they wanted to be writers, it was a staging post. Oddly enough, I always wanted to just be a bookseller. Lack of talent in any other respect, perhaps. But I would hope that we are now also going to give booksellers in our businesses real long-term careers and a real sense of satisfaction for what they do within this trade. What have I not covered? We need to get online right, but the truth of the matter is that Amazon is quite brilliant at that bit of it. They're a loathsome company in all other respects, but they will pop something through your letterbox very efficiently, and the Kindle is clearly a brilliant device, and the whole ecosystem that delivers digital books is clearly brilliant. I do not pretend that we will invent something better than them, or that we will be able to compete adequately in the digital space. In the online space, we got a decent chance. If we can get a decent, quick, and responsive website that you can look up books from, and you can get them more intelligently displayed to you, and we can target it at our customers, then actually the Amazon one isn't that great. If we can get the logistics side of it better, which we're beginning to do, then it's quite likely that we will have a very decent future in the online space. Certainly click and collect and all of those sides of e-commerce will work very well with us. And Amazon doesn't have that in their armory. So again, perhaps because I come from the independent sector, I don't really have a concern about Amazon. They do what they do it extremely well, and they can carry on doing it extremely well. But we need to do our bit with excellence and with pride, and have every opportunity of doing that. So I am confident. I think bookshops will not look very as different as some of my peers in the world of publishing who foresee some really extraordinary further revolution. I don't see that. I think the book will be a book, and it will look like a book for quite some time, and people will continue to buy them, and we will continue to sell them.